This is the after show on our Simone de Beauvoir episodes. That's number, what, 140 and 141, I believe. And our regular, our regular host, Danny LaBelle, is stuck in traffic and might join us at any point. But let's go through first. Jenny, introduce yourself. Tell us, you're the person who had studied some Simone de Beauvoir, who we dragged on as our token scholar, or whatever level of that you want to consider yourself, to help correct misapprehensions from getting worse.
Okay, well, I'm Jenny Hansen. I'm a professor at St. Lawrence University in the philosophy department, but the last couple years I've been running our first year program, so I'm a full-time administrator at the moment, so my philosophy is rusty, and I'm glad that you gave me the invitation. So I'll do the best I can to correct misapprehensions, but I had to reread this whole thing to remember what she argues. So, but yeah, I did my dissertation on Luce Irigaray, but I did a lot of work on French feminism in general. So that's my background.
All right, next, let's just go down the list. Luke, tell us about your Noetic project and who you are and all that. Luke, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
All right,
My
speak.
turn? All right.
Yes.
I'm Luke Johnson. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Georgia. I'm doing a dissertation on Soren Kierkegaard, and I'm also building an educational platform called Noetic. It's an app. You can download it, and you can take advantage of some courses that I've put together and continue to take advantage of some resources that I'm putting together in regards to Soren Kierkegaard right now. Yeah, and I put together a whole course on Simone de Beauvoir's The Ethics of Ambiguity. I have some distance from it, so I don't have Jenny's recall or anything like that. I was able to do a quick study by sampling some things online earlier today, but I might be deferential to her as far as the know-it-all on the panel.
Let's keep going. Alex.
My name's Alex Park. I hail from Alameda, California. I professionally have no relationship to philosophy, but I'm a very long time autodidact. My main interests are Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and American pragmatism, especially James and Rorty. I am looking forward to discussing this text with all of you.
All right, let's keep it going. Tiffany.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Reyes. I'm from Colorado. I went to school at Northwestern and I studied Eastern philosophy there, but my Western philosophy I've mostly studied on my own or audited classes in it and things. And I really like Simone de Beauvoir. So.
All right, and Brittany, I see you're muted. Unmute yourself. All right.
Hey. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Brittany. I'm from the Boston area. I'm actually a new fan of Partially Examined Life. I was trying to, I barely even qualified to sit in the audience of this conversation, so I was trying to, just sort of like watch from afar, but the link wasn't working, so I figured I would just hop on and join, introduce myself. I sell software. Again, no professional association with philosophy whatsoever, but I've just started to try to dip a toe into existentialism, if that's possible. I'm currently reading The Second Sex, first couple chapters or so. So I'm very excited when I saw that this conversation was something I could join. So nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, all right. So that's everybody that's here right now. I know Danny LaBelle just texted me is trying to join, and we might have some more folks jump on, but we'll proceed forward. I guess who wants to start? Well, Jenny, why don't you start us? Was there something glaring from listening to the podcast that you were like, oh, why didn't they? If they just covered that point, that would have really made it much more clear what she was about. Something that jumped out like that.
I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say that in general. But it's something Alex just said reminded me of what I kept thinking when I was listening to the podcast, which is, since graduate school, which was a long time ago, I do much more work in American pragmatism, and so the entire time I was rereading this text, I was thinking more of just how. If you think about what her project is akin to what James is doing, like she's kind of putting forward a defense of pragmatism as an epistemology or an ethics, then I think you can get away from turning her into Kant or turning her into some other kind of like canonical figure. She's actually I think she's trying to do her French version of essentially what James starts. And then I think the reason that it doesn't sound more like American pragmatism is because James influences Husserl, who then and then her education is Husserl, and then she's also being educated in Hegel by Kojève, and so all of the language and the technical support of her argument seem like it's this completely foreign tradition. But I really think it's just a kinship with American pragmatism, and I think that's why there's so much there that's about pluralism and democracy and the individual and et cetera, et cetera. So that's something I would add, but I don't think that you necessarily got it wrong.
All right, and I'm sure that the audience members who are struggling to follow along even what we were talking about, and like, how could this possibly work? Why would she think that you care about others just because you're exerting your own freedom? I'm sure they were thinking, but if they were just keeping in mind the Kojève link, the American pragmatism link, then it would all become clear.
Well, no, I could say more about that. I'm giving you like the tiny little, but
Jenny, can I ask you a question?
There, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Luke, speak.
Speak, Luke.
Hey, Jenny, may I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Well, sorry, was it Luke or was it Alex that wanted to ask a question?
That was Luke.
All right.
Jenny, so my question to you would be, when you're analogizing Simone de Beauvoir to James, do you feel like it's pure synchronicity, or do you feel like they're drinking from the same philosophical fountain that led them to a lot of the same conclusions? I'm unfamiliar with James. I tend to see where Simone de Beauvoir was getting a lot of her ideas from Sartre, Kierkegaard, Hegel, Kant, but I was just kind of curious how you felt like James may have been influenced by these figures, and if they're sort of going along these parallel lines, or was it just a matter of chance intellectual convergence?
I don't think it's chance, but I don't. Okay, so this is where like I am not a scholar of de Beauvoir here, so there was probably someone out there who could say yes, at this year in her life she was reading, the pragmatism lectures, but she may not have ever read James, but James is a massive influence to Husserl, and you can see Husserl in this text, this whole notion of inner subjectivity, and even when she uses the word horizon in the text, that comes directly from James. And so James is the one who coins the term horizon that gets taken up in Husserl. Yeah?
Is there a particular Husserl text that you think she is influenced by?
I wouldn't be the person to answer that question. I think, what I think when I read, this is kind of answering a different question, but when I read this text again too, I don't really see her dialoguing directly with philosophers. I mean, she's definitely there. Kierkegaard is there because she's got Kierkegaard's critique of Hegel, and I think that's like the most prominent philosopher she's talking about in this text. But in general, I think she's talking to the politics, like the intellectuals and the different political positions they've taken up that have grown out of the sort of Hegelians or the Marxists or the communists. And so I don't really, even when she's coming out of like Heidegger, and I don't know that she ever mentions Husserl directly, I don't think she's it's not a scholarly argument. She's not kind of building on a text. She's taking all of these influences and she's building a sort of what she thinks is going to be a viable way forward, and an explanation of World War II. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
So what I hear, I want to just feed back to Jennifer just a second, because I completely agree with you that for me, when I read this, to me it was just screaming Kierkegaard the whole way. Like even her typology of sub-man and serious man and all that stuff, which she explicitly acknowledges in the case of the serious man that's been well covered by Nietzsche and Kierkegaard and Hegel and so on and so forth. But the sickness unto death and Kierkegaard's typology of the different stages of despair, I'm not saying it maps one-to-one with what de Beauvoir lays out here, but I think you could, if you wanted to, create a fairly systematic relationship between the kind of progression that Kierkegaard describes relative to despair and the kind of sort of typology that she develops relative to this concept of whether or not people are accepting or rejecting or fleeing from or embracing their freedom. So to me, this text was super saturated with Kierkegaard. But with regards to the connection to James, I do think I see you going towards what she really deals with in the third section, which is this attempt to take this sort of super abstract formal idea that clearly also comes from Sartre, comes from Kierkegaard, and then how do we concretely apply it to the world, right? Rather than it just being this abstract formalism, how does it actually hook up to political action? How do we actually apply it to real concrete situations so that we're not just writing these, these grandiose texts, but actually like dealing with real serious problems. I mean, there's actually a pretty good line where she's explicitly responding to Kierkegaard. I put this one in here, where she's talking about Abraham. Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she says, we have seen that this recourse to the serious is a lie. It entails the sacrifice of man to the thing, of freedom to the cause. In order for the return to the positive to be genuine, it must involve negativity. It must not conceal the antinomies between means and end, present, future, etc., etc. Kierkegaard has said that what distinguishes the Pharisee from the genuinely moral man is that the former considers his anguish as a sure sign of his virtue. From the fact that he asks himself, am I Abraham, he concludes, I am Abraham. But morality resides in the painfulness of an indefinite questioning. The problem which we are posing is not the same as that of Kierkegaard. The important thing to us is to know whether in given conditions Isaac must be killed or not. Now, I'm not sure whether she's successful in that attempt, but I do think that that's her goal, is to try, can she extract from this formal architecture actual guidance that will help us, e.g., determine whether or not Isaac should be killed, determine whether or not the Stalinist purges are justifiable, right? There's all these concrete moral issues in the world, and can we extract from existentialist ethics something that helps us make concrete, pragmatic decisions? Now, how that hooks up to American pragmatism is a further question, but that's kind of where I saw you going with that.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually really interesting. I think, if you want to go to the question of, okay, well, let me just say this, and then I'll go to what you said. So I think if I'm going to say more about listening to the episode, I think what makes me nervous is thinking of her her argument for others and and sort of like the primacy of the freedom of others. Thinking of it as a Kantian argument misses really the point. I think it's dangerous to do that, and so I think looking at Kierkegaard or James or something is better. But going back to what you were just saying about, can we give some kind of guidance in real world situations that is, that's going to help us make a better rather than worse choice. What she ends up giving, I think, is more like certain characteristics of the decision or how the decision was made than anything like rules, right? So in that example there from Kierkegaard, I mean, one of the things that she's stressing throughout is I mean, Kierkegaard might call it like anguish or something, but the idea is that you shouldn't be certain, right? That it should be, you should, it reminds me, I think it's in Fear and Trembling, where the worrisome thing is the person that sort of understands the choice to kill Isaac, like it was like completely logical, and of course you would do that. It should be something that would have been incredibly insane, and yet you were going to do it anyways, right? Like it's something that should bother you, and all those examples she gives of like if we might have to kill the young soldier, or we might all these things might have to happen, but they should never have been things that you could rationalize afterwards. They can't be things you should have been able to live with. You can't ever have been certain that what you were doing was exactly right. I think she's emphasizing that as a characteristic of how to make better rather than worse decisions, rather than say, as long as I know that I didn't interfere with the freedom of or the autonomy of the other, then I'm good, right? You could say more and more about that, but
Hey, Jenny. Jenny, if
Yeah.
I may intrude here, and I want to defend the guys on the podcast a little bit. I think you've sort of labeled them as sort of Kantian interpreters of Simone de Beauvoir, and I wonder why you do that. Because, and I'm not trying to pick on you, because if I can recall the episodes correctly, I think they were saying, well, it has hues of this in the sense that she wants to respect individuals as ends in and of themselves, so that we don't make people purely useful or whatever. But I don't think the guys were saying that she was a Kantian.
So can I just put in, right, the two things that were the connections with Kant were the one that you just pointed out, Luke, that sort of the upshot, the generalization of her ethics, which is supposed to be pretty Nietzschean and pretty open-ended, and somehow it requires creativity, right? To positively figure out what to do, you don't have a set of rules. It's not like something that, a pre-Nietzsche sort of ethics, like even though Kant thought you could get ethics out of reason itself, the ethics that it came up with was pretty much the same, inherited from religion, traditional ethics. And Nietzsche just said, no, if you get rid of God, it should really mess up. It should really change what you end up valuing. And so Simone de Beauvoir, even though I think she doesn't have very good comments about Nietzsche, she thinks Nietzsche is a subjectivist and ultimately an adventurer, one of these types that she objects to, who's not properly respectful of other people. But still, she retains the creativity element. The part of Kant that comes in then is again, what Luke just said, that, okay, well, within this creativity, you still have to treat everybody as ends in themselves. Acknowledge that if you kill a person, you're destroying a world, you're destroying a subjectivity, so that kind of thing runs through Beauvoir and other existential type thinkers as well. And then the other thing was just, well, how do you get to the point of your respect for others in the first place? Well, it's supposed to be this is sort of the big thing we're trying to trace out through the episode, is somehow by willing your own freedom, you have to, if you're being self-consistent about it, you have to will the freedom, really the benefit of other people. And the way that kind of argument, I mean, it's not a matter of like, reflect on what you really, really want. Like, that's how we usually put it in terms of Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
But this is supposed to be something just about the structure of the will itself, that if you will your own freedom, then you are willing this other thing sort of just by necessity. And that was a very Kantian point. Of course, Kant takes it that you are in fact willing the categorical imperative. You are willing something, it's much more specific than simply willing the freedom of others. And but again, we were thinking you could characterize that still as treat others as ends in themselves.
Can I say something to that?
Yes.
So I didn't mean to kind of say, oh my God, you ruined her, you made her a Kantian, but I think it's just a reflection of kind of the way I think now about this work after all this other stuff I've read. And so when I think about her, if she's giving an argument for why the freedom of others matters, I don't think about it in terms of sort of self-consistency of willing. I think of it in terms of her recognition. It's a very practical reason, which is that willing is a spontaneous thing that just happens. We can't not be in the world and will, and we're sort of thrown in the world, and we have certain temperaments, and we have certain directions we go. And she talks about obstacles and failures. It's very phenomenological there. But that willing needs content, and the content is what's inherited from where you are. Like, other people are supplying ideas and models and examples of your projects. And if there aren't a lot of those, if there's no plural instances of those, then you kind of, and this is me sounding like a Jamesian now, the world just becomes this monistic thing. There's no more creativity. There's no more future, right? It just becomes totality. And so I guess all I'm saying is that, yeah, you can make that Kantian argument, and certainly it's a fine way to defend it. But I think I just see her so much just talking about this in very pragmatic terms, that like we are in the world and we spontaneously are going to act, and we're going to act towards the future, and then we're going to face obstacles, and some of those will enable us to creatively overcome them. Some of us will try to avoid them because we'll be like, shit, I don't know what to do, and I'll just take the easy path. I'll do what my dad did. Some of us are, going to want someone to tell us what to do. And then some of us are going to be denied even being able to like spontaneously act, and that's the oppression thing. And but all of that, will be nothing if there's no content on which we're building. If we're not sort of like, okay, well, I reject the way that the school taught children when I was in school, so I'm going to create a new educational system, because like you need the content to negate. And so if you don't have others generating content, there's no future project for you. That's, I guess, the way that I see it.
Well, do you think that's necessarily true? I mean, how many individuals do you need in order to embark on a future project? I mean, do you really need to have, like, what's the number? But I guess I'm saying if you're waiting,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you're constantly waiting for like the magic number of individuals to contribute content to your project, you might be waiting for a long time. I think you just have to get going. But
if I can jump in here, I think I see what she was. I'm late to the discussion, but I really heard the point that she was trying to make. I think I can make it. I can make it sharp.
Well, welcome, Ken. Welcome, Ken. Ken, veteran of our other after shows. All right.
Anyway, so the point about needing context and needing other people is not so much that you need any specific number before you can get started, but that you start with some indeterminate number on whom you are dependent in a way that you can't understand until you've examined the situation very carefully. And that's the only comment I wanted to make. And now please go ahead with your thought.
Yeah. I don't know. I actually don't know. There's like a ton of daylight, really, Jenny, between how you and I sort of are interpreting this particular. I'm just kind of curious, like, if there were any other major critiques that were jutting out from the show that you picked up on. I mean, I think it was really ambitious what Mark and the guys tried to do to cover the text in 4 episodes. Yeah. What else did you? I'm kind of curious. What else you thought may have been lacking from the show?
Can I just jump in? So before, I just want to make sure we're including everybody. So I'd love to hear more about all the things Jennifer thinks that we left out and said wrong. But can we, Brittany or Tiffany or Alex or anybody or Ken, were there other things that just what was your impression? Were you confused about something? Was there something that was nagging you?
Well, actually, I was struck in this de Beauvoir episode that you guys, all four of you, did something that you do uniquely well on this text, which is you like to take a certain amount of material and make sure you cover it. And this is one of my weaknesses reading a lot of philosophy books. I tend to pick out the arguments that are relevant to my own projects. But you guys really covered the book, covered the arguments, and I got a much better sense of de Beauvoir than I did before when I read her book in college, and even after having read a bunch of Sartre, a bunch of other existentialists. So it's a great example of how book-oriented methodology is valuable for all of us. So it was a very much appreciated series. Thanks.
Hear, hear.
Well, if I was to, I mean, the one thing, I mean, I think what you guys do is good, and it was a particularly good episode, and it was one of the first episodes where I actually resulted in me purchasing the thing that was under discussion. So, I mean, I'd say that was a success. But there was a hanging up period where you guys got into a fairly long discussion about whether or not. And I'm going to struggle to articulate this exactly well because it was about a week ago that I actually listened to this particular part of the podcast, but where it was, the discussion was, things in the world cannot oppress you. Only other people can oppress you. And there was a fairly detailed conversation about that I thought, probably could have just been summed up by the fact, which I think maybe from my point of view, what is implicit in de Beauvoir, but which you actually need to know something about Sartre to bring out, is that a lot of this is just about Sartre's ontology and about the in itself, the for itself, and the being in others, right? So the essential tension, the reason things can't oppress you is because things are passive. They are the in itself. It is us being for itself over and against in themselves that we have freedom at all. And in fact, we're relating to our own thingness as conscious entities. The reason people can oppress each other is because we have that transcendent aspect and we can reduce each other to things. So oppression just is taking the transcendence of others and thingifying it. And that is what we experience in in No Exit and Sartre's No Exit. The gaze, the potency of the gaze, the reason other people are hell is because when we are seen by other people, the potency of their transcendence is what creates objectification, and we can experience ourselves as objects in their eyes. And that gets exercised programmatically within tyranny or any system of oppression, or even in a moral system like utilitarianism, when people are thingified relative to ideals, relative to political programs, and so on and so forth. But anyways, that was my commentary on that little subsection of the podcast. I thought you guys kind of got into a whirlpool, but to me it seems sort of a clear outgrowth of Sartre's concept of how the self is structured.
I don't want to derail the conversation.
If I can ask a pragmatic question, I noticed that Mark left the conversation. Danny, are we still
here.
Good?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a great conversation going, and I'm glad. I don't want to derail it in any way. I'm sorry I'm late. I was caught up in good old-fashioned LA traffic that I couldn't get out of, and
I just want to make.
Tried to join on my phone.
Have you replaced Mark? I think is that what you're asking, Luke?
That might be what happened. I don't know if he's coming back or not, but I'm here and he's gone. So.
And we're still recording.
I think we're going. I think we're still recording. It looks good. So let's. Can I get a quick reintroduction from everyone, and then we'll pick up right where we left off.
Sure.
So, hey everybody, I'm Danny. I've been here before. I've been here for all of them, I think. And Jennifer, you want to take it next?
Sure. I'm Jenny Hansen. Teach philosophy at St. Lawrence University. Is that good? Short and sweet?
Where is that?
Oh, Canton, New York. So I would say upstate New York, but that you'll think of like Poughkeepsie. I'm like northern New York. I'm south of 18 miles south of the Canadian border, like up here in the, frozen hinterlands or whatever, northern New York.
Nice to have you with us. And who wants to jump in next? Brittany?
Sure.
One of my thing here.
Yeah, Brittany Pettit. I'm in the Boston area, very shy, casual fan. I also went to school in upstate New York, so I went to Skidmore in the frozen tundra wasteland of Saratoga Springs, so I know all about Canton.
Which is a lot hipper than Canton.
Yeah, I know. But it's nice to meet you guys. Thanks for letting me listen.
What do you do now?
I sell software, totally related.
Oh, what kind of software?
Enterprise-grade HR software, so if you run like a big business and you need to cut paychecks or something like that, I can definitely help you out.
Awesome, man. I will call you back when I'm successful. Your name just comes up as A.
Yeah, that's me. I don't know why it came up as A. Clearly, I need to configure my Google Hangout settings. But my name's Alex Park. I'm from California. I study philosophy in my spare time.
And where in California are you?
I'm in Alameda, California, which is adjacent to Oakland.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I always see good stuff on Craigslist there, but it's too far away from me.
Where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, that's a little bit far.
Yeah, but they have good stuff. Keep an eye